Australia, the land down under, is a place of stunning beauty, unique wildlife, and a history that stretches back tens of thousands of years. From its early connection with southern Asia, the arrival of its indigenous peoples, the waves of European exploration, to the significant impact of British colonization, Australia's story is one of evolution and resilience. In today's video, we'll take a detailed journey through the history of Australia, uncovering the people who shaped its land and the changes that have brought us to the modern nation we know today. Around 50,000 years ago, Australia was not as isolated as it is today. During the Ice Age, sea levels were much lower, and a vast landmass known as Sahul connected Australia to New Guinea, while Sundaland linked Southeast Asia to Indonesia. This meant that early humans from Southeast Asia could cross these exposed land bridges, bringing the first people to Australia. The indigenous peoples of Australia, known as Aboriginal Australians, are believed to have arrived during this period. These early humans brought with them knowledge of how to survive in this new and often harsh environment. They lived off the land, hunting native animals such as kangaroos and emus, gathering wild fruits, seeds and vegetables, and fishing in Australia's rivers and coastal waters. Australia's ancient connection to southern Asia also introduced new species of plants and animals, which shaped the ecosystem that these early inhabitants relied upon. The relationship between the people and the land was deeply symbiotic, with Indigenous Australians developing a profound understanding of the environment through a system known as fire stick farming, where controlled burns were used to manage the landscape. Indigenous Australians' connection to their land is central to their belief system, known as the Dreamtime. In Dreamtime stories, the world was created by ancestral beings who shaped the land, animals, and people, creating a spiritual connection that still resonates today. The stories passed down through generations also serve practical purposes, acting as guides for navigation, survival, and social structures. These stories are etched in rock art across the continent, providing a visual narrative of the Dreamtime and documenting the deep history of the indigenous peoples. The first known Europeans to reach Australian shores were the Dutch. In 1606, Willem Janszoon captained thee, sailing along the western coast of Cape York Peninsula. Janszoon's journey marked the first recorded European sighting of the continent, though the Dutch referred to it as New Holland. Though the Dutch mapped parts of the coastline, they didn't establish settlements, focusing instead on their trade routes through the East Indies. Janszoon's arrival did little to change life in Australia, as his contact with the land and its people was minimal. Abel Tasman, another Dutch explorer, expanded on Janszoon's discoveries in 1642 when he reached Tasmania and parts of New Zealand. Tasman's voyages contributed significantly to European knowledge of the Southern Hemisphere, but like Janszoon, he never set foot on the Australian mainland. In 1770, the British captain James Cook made a monumental discovery that would change Australia's future. Cook aboard thee mapped the eastern coast of Australia, landing at Botany Bay and claiming the land for Britain. This exploration sparked British interest in colonising the territory. For the Indigenous Australians living in this region, Cook's landing marked the beginning of a long period of displacement and upheaval. Their lands were soon claimed by the British without negotiation or treaty, setting the stage for future conflicts and significant disruptions to their way of life. On January 26, 1788, the First Fleet, consisting of 11 ships carrying over 700 convicts, soldiers and officers, arrived in Botany Bay to establish a penal colony in New South Wales. This marked the beginning of British colonisation in Australia. The convicts, forced to work under harsh conditions, helped build the infrastructure of the first European settlement. Life in the early colony was difficult. Food shortages and unfamiliar conditions plagued the settlers. The indigenous populations, however, faced much greater challenges as their land was taken and new diseases were introduced. In terms of food, the early British settlers struggled to adapt to the Australian environment. Used to European farming practices, they found the soil and climate difficult to work with. Initially, the colonists survived on supplies brought from England, supplemented by fishing and hunting native animals such as kangaroos. Eventually, they began cultivating crops like wheat, but it took years for the colony to become self-sufficient. In contrast, Indigenous Australians had a deep understanding of how to live off the land, using their knowledge of local plants, animals and fishing practices to thrive. Unfortunately, this knowledge was often disregarded by the settlers, leading to food shortages and conflicts. One of the most devastating impacts of British colonisation was the introduction of European diseases. Smallpox, tuberculosis and influenza ravaged indigenous populations who had no natural immunity to these illnesses. It's estimated that these diseases wiped out large numbers of Aboriginal Australians in the first decades of colonisation, dramatically reducing their populations and causing deep social upheaval. The arrival of disease had long-lasting effects on indigenous communities, contributing to the breakdown of traditional ways of life and further weakening their ability to resist the colonisation of their lands. The discovery of gold in 1851 in New South Wales and Victoria transformed Australia. The gold rush attracted immigrants from around the world, including Europe, America and China, dramatically increasing Australia's population. This influx of people led to the rapid development of infrastructure, new towns and industries, helping to transition Australia from a penal colony to a thriving economy. However, the gold rush also led to tensions between the settlers and indigenous peoples, as more land was taken for mining and competition for resources intensified. As the colonies grew, so did the movement toward unification. On January 1st, 1901, the 6 colonies united to form the Commonwealth of Australia. This marked the beginning of a new era, with Australia gaining greater autonomy from Britain, though it remained part of the British Empire. Australia's involvement in the 2 world wars played a major role in shaping its national identity. During World War I, the Anzac, Australian and New Zealand Army Corps forces, fought at Gallipoli, a campaign that became a defining moment in the nation's history. After World War II, Australia embraced a new wave of immigration, leading to the multicultural society we see today. Today, Australia continues to grapple with its colonial past, particularly in relation to its indigenous peoples. Significant milestones, such as the 1967 referendum and the 1992 Mabo decision, have contributed to the recognition of indigenous land rights and the importance of reconciliation. Australia's story is one of discovery, conflict, resilience and transformation. From its ancient ties to southern Asia to its vibrant multicultural present, Australia's journey continues to evolve. Its history is marked by deep connections to the land, hard-won progress, and a future that still holds many chapters to be written. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more history adventures.